Let's see where this one
Yellow.
Sound is on.
was.
Yellow.
Agenda's on the board.
It's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the Town of Chicopee Planning Commission to order. Ask you all to stand for invocation and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing tonight, that those actions that we take will be beneficial to the town and be pleasing in your sight. And once again, we ask, take care of all those who have suffered in the most critical, the earthquake over in Turkey and in Syria. Bless those people. Take care of them. Put your arms around them in their dire need. Take care of our armed services, our police, our emergency coordinator, and our town. And all these things we ask in your most precious name. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any public participation comments? Having none, I would ask for a review of the agenda. Any changes or corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved, thank you. First order of business tonight is the approval of January 10th regular meeting minutes. Again, are there any corrections, additions?
I'll make a motion to
approve the agenda, or approve the minutes, sorry.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
second.
I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved, thank you. Second item of business is a discussion of the area and heights in residential districts. And Mr. Bowden, I think this is something we have considered in the past, but we need to address again.
Yes, so as somebody knows, we got a new house that was built on Church Street and getting a lot of complaints on it. Our zoning ordinance allows structures to build, if you're in the flood zone, the max height is 36 feet in height, but that can be from 2 foot above base flood, which is our freeboard. If a house is built in an area that's not in the flood zone, it's 36 feet in height from grade. So this house is at 36 feet, actually 36 feet from base flood, actually less than 36. But it is, kind of looks out of place. So this house was put back on a same footprint location where one was removed and put back. We do have a firewall on this end of it, and as you see, no windows go for close to the property line. But it's still a little bit out of character in the code. If you look in the comprehensive plan, it kind of tells us that replace these houses, but you want to try to keep the same character as the neighborhood, which kind of falls in a loophole. Is we still want to keep the same character, but again, if you're in a flood zone, we're required to meet requirements of FEMA and our flood elevation. We still got to raise them to an extent. Can we find a medium that we can raise them and still keeping the character with the neighborhood? So like if you're taking this house here, for instance, where they're closer to the property line, do we put something with a medium height? We got so you can build with the average setback in the front, each structure side of you. Do we put some there that you can get the average height of the structures on them so we can keep them at the same roof line? And on the same thing, if you built that house on the same lot, and let's say that you can meet all your setbacks, then I think it's free game, and you build it just as the zoning ordinance says. You know, if you meet your 25, your 10, because then you wouldn't have something real tall right up on your front sidewalk.
Our thinking was that if the code in all zones, in all residential zones, gives the option, gives the builder the option of, instead of meeting the current setback for that zone, you can take the average, and here it says right here, when a structure to be built in an area where there are existing structures, the minimum setback may be waived, and the setback line may be the average setback of the structures on either side. Our thought was, and if you look at this house again, it is right up on the street, taking full advantage of that clause in the zoning code.
We've exercised that clause many times.
Many times. It's been in there since
Yeah.
I was on the planning commission years ago. But our thought is, okay, well, if you're going to take advantage of that section of the code, then we're going to require you to take the average maybe of the heights of that structure, the associated structures too. That way, it helps to maintain the character of the neighborhood. If you're going to put, otherwise you're going to end up with this, a very, very tall structure right up on the sidewalk that looks totally out of place with the existing homes. So the thought is if you're going to take advantage of the average setback, front yard setback for these structures, then we're going to force you to also consider height, the average height as well. I'm not exactly sure what that wording would be yet, and maybe some tweaks required. I'll put some samples in here, and here's a sample wording here, what's underlined. However, if the average setback is used, height above existing grade of the proposed structure shall be limited to the average height of the average height above existing grade of the four structures closest to the lot in question. That's just one idea. It may require some tweaking.
I don't recall, what was the actual height of the existing structure before it was taken down?
I do not know.
If you look at the
Is
picture
it-
here.
Is it on Google? Or-
Yeah, I bet you Google Maps will still have it
It
open.
might
Well,
have.
but measuring the height of it is going to be
I
something.
mean, you can look at the line if you go to Acme.
No, it wasn't a three-story building.
No,
It
it's
was-
two-story.
It was two-story.
Yeah,
Was that house done in the footprint of the other house, or was
Yes.
it done with
Yeah.
the average of the other,
it
of
was
the two
done in
houses?
footprint.
So that was actually in
Yeah,
front of
that's
the
the
other two
dilemma.
houses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the problem seems to be.
Well, it actually is right in line with the porch of the other one there, it's pretty close. Depends on which angle you look coming down the road, one side is right even with the porch of, used to be Mr. Fisher's house, and the other one on the other side, so.
Now, how about in the back? Does it meet the setbacks in the back, or is that done in
Oh, yeah.
footprint?
It
too?
meets setback in the back, that's where the drain fields are,
Okay.
But not on the sides.
not on sides.
Not on the sides.
Yeah, on the right side here,
It's not-
we're 4 foot on the, front side, we're 3 foot something on the back side. Don't know the exact measurement, 3 foot something.
Now, is that height 36 feet, is that from the actual flood elevation that's in that zone,
Two
or is
foot.
that the 2 foot?
2 foot report.
So it's really 38 foot.
So that really gives you that extra 2 feet
Yeah.
from the actual flood zone.
It doesn't increase the structure size, it just puts the elevation that much.
If you look at that, I think it's safe to say that this structure is at least 10 feet above the roofs adjacent to it.
Mhm.
I think that's not a stretch at all to say it's at least 10 feet.
Yeah. Acme, a good 2,000.
I think in Captain's Code now, they're actually making them go from the existing ground. Because they've had a lot of complaints over houses being too tall.
Where the datum is for that has been debated several times as well. Do you go above ground, do you go above base flood elevation? The argument for base flood elevation is you can't build living space below base flood elevation.
Mhm.
So you're penalizing people with a low lot because they have to come up to a certain height before they can start building their living space.
One regulation requiring them to build it to a certain height, and then we have another regulation requirement says you can't build it so high.
That 3 stories?
36
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, 2.5, yeah,
That's
kind of roofing,
definitely-
yes.
Yeah, that's 3 stories.
But FEMA
Yeah.
dictated where we went finally with the 2 feet.
Right.
That satisfied FEMA's requirements.
And I think you have to go that way.
I don't see how you get away with that.
Right, yeah.
You know,
But
Well,
again,
'cause you're forcing them to go up higher to begin with.
Yeah.
the problem,
And
again,
the
with, we've had in the past is a design feature is subjective.
Right. But still, if you went
You know,
with this
unless
two-story
you're-
house,
had really specific.
then that'd be more in line with what is there.
Mhm.
But still, I mean, you want to maximize too on
But
their,
it was a two-story house there before.
yeah, because the house is only 16 foot wide.
And you're saying in the same footprint, you almost should
Yeah.
say, okay, if that was a two-story house, this has gotta be a two-story house. If you're gonna,
How
if you're
wide
gonna,
was the
if you're
house?
gonna allow them to
I
be
think
closer to
16.
the line.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it the house you built 16?
What's that now?
That house on East Side Drive, is that 16 foot wide? Or-
No, it's 20 foot wide.
Oh, it is 20 foot,
Mhm.
so that's narrower than this is 16.
I think that would have been 16.
Gives you the
16
illusion of
something.
being
That house is 16 foot wide?
I think it's what it is. 16, 17 feet.
The,
It's all
I-
steps.
Huh?
It's all steps.
well, and the other difference maybe too, I don't recall the house that was there, but all the other houses that we see in the image have front porches. So if that second and third story were indented a bit, it would be less imposing.
Well, we didn't get to take a picture of it, but if somebody's recall, the house is being built by Herline,
next to Bob Tall.
next to Bob Tall.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of built in the same situation, using the existing setbacks. And that's a two-story, and that's more, kind of fits into the, nobody's ever said a word or complained about that one. Same street, you know, less than what, a mile apart. And,
But this one, as soon as they started framing the third floor, we started getting complaints.
Yeah.
As soon as
So
they
you can
started
see.
standing on
As soon as you make that turn on the church street.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
it is.
it, And it just got worse when they put siding on
Mm-hmm.
not saying it does anything wrong, we just need to address it, so.
No, it's in compliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the real
Which is the
issue. you
problem.
know.
Yeah.
Are you gonna change your requirements based upon one experience? Or is there a possibility that this is not an anomaly, you're gonna
No, I
be faced
mean-
with this again?
Now, you can ride all over our island in different spots, and you got the same incident. Some of them stick out more than the other.
it. Well, if you look at that picture, there are 4 houses to the east of that one.
Yeah.
There are 4 more opportunities to do the same thing.
Yeah. And I think with like centralized sewer, that would be relatively common.
Mhm.
I thought about it after I wrote notes and I
Well, the
thought,
house
you
on
know,
the house on the corner, that's another example of where they've squeezed in a house under the bare minimums or bare requirements to meet every code, but it's on the sidewalk for all practical purposes. I
Yeah, I understand letting people stay in the same footprint if you're building a house there because there's not that much room there to begin with. But when the other house is a two-story house, I almost think that if you're gonna stay in the same footprint, then okay, then you gotta make this house like this unless you can meet setbacks.
And I'm just
Then-
wondering, was there a porch on the original footprint,
I don't think so.
or was it an actual house?
It was a little porch, I believe, little scoop or something, little overhang or something. Yeah, it used to be what Cookie Harris.
was.
It's a- Yeah, it's where.
Yeah, Cookie and
All it was a little teeny roof to come out. That was it.
Yep.
Actually, that's what I was pulling up now on my phone. Let's see what we do.
No, come down,
This one.
The narrower.
the narrow one.
That's not.
Mm-mm.
So there was a house. There
No,
was
no,
a-
the next one,
Yes, sir, so that's
the next one to the right,
The next one to the right of that?
yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a.
That's it.
The second story
Used to be
overhang, just
pink.
overhung just a foot or so.
Yeah, but it wasn't such imposing, it didn't draw your eye to it from the standpoint of the way this one.
And I will say, if you notice, the door here is not, what, 6'8"? Most residential doors are 6'8", and you can see that the floor system There's hardly any gutter.
It's sitting on the ground.
Yeah, well, most of them are, you know, 7-foot ceilings or 6-8 ceilings,
So this is 2 stories, but
True.
they're
2 by 8 floor
stories.
joists.
True.
So, you know, now we're 2 by 10, 2 by 12 floor joists, so you're gaining inches on every level.
Yeah, and everybody wants open floor plans, so they're using engineered lumber to
And
get those spans.
minimum now is, what, 9 foot a story, because you got a foot of floor system, and then
Mhm.
you got 8-foot studs.
Mm-hmm.
So you're 9 foot, 9 foot 6 inches, something like that. That's if they don't ask for 9 foot, 10-foot ceilings in a house. A lot of them do now.
In the building code itself, Mort, is there anything that would help us
No,
from the
'cause
standpoint when you start talking about this?
No, if you go by story, if you look at the definition of story, it's gonna tell you from the floor to the ceiling. So you could have one story, it could be 12 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a 10-foot ceiling in one of my
Yeah.
rooms, so it's
I think that the existing code references number of stories and overall height, correct?
Yeah, so depends on where you're building at. Let's say you were 3 stories and you have pilings underneath of it. Underneath of the pilings would not be a story if it was enclosed less than 600 square feet. So you can do 600 square feet closed, it's not counted as a story.
but the pilings would go to your overall height.
Yes.
not
Yeah,
instead of-
yeah, you're still rural height.
Still 36.
Right.
no, no, right.
But it would stop it from being a whole nother story underneath of it being enclosed.
I think what you're suggesting, or what we're looking at is a serious rewrite of the code. If you're gonna address that, otherwise you're gonna have it happen again. You could,
And the only thing I would change is the amount of stories to match what the stories that we're doing, the footprint of the old house. So let's do a footprint of the amount of stories. I know that they can make a 10-foot whatever ceiling if they want to, but I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what we were getting to with taking the average height. If you look at all 4 of these houses, if you look at all 4 of these houses, they all appear to be similar, very similar in height that are next to this.
I don't think any of them are over 30 foot.
Well, do you think eventually all those other houses are gonna be gone, and you're gonna have 4 more houses look just like it, and it's gonna look all right?
Maybe when our kids are grown up and have grandkids, who
Yeah.
knows? But, you know, that this one, and not just our opinion, but the opinion of everybody who's called here about it, is, although legal and meets code, is totally out of character with the neighborhood.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, is that something that, I mean, it seems to me that at times we talked about like an architectural review board. Is that a good
That's more of an,
example of why you want something like that?
that's more of an HOA standard, and I don't know that the town could get away with an architectural review board. That's an HOA thing, like the Captain's Code and stuff, they have that, so that they keep.
When Bill Neville was here,
Association.
when Bill Neville was here as our planner, full-time planner, we looked into design features and compatibility, et cetera, et cetera. And the restrictions and what you run into is a brick wall.
Right.
Then it's becomes a matter of taste.
Yeah, it's
I've said many
subjective.
times, you can't regulate taste. Somebody wants to paint their house
Unfortunately.
purple and pink stripes, you know, it's their house.
Yep.
Well, Dave's suggestion of relative to the building code itself that exists, i.e. we permit a structure to be placed back on the original footprint, but limiting the height to the original height. Do you think that would be a legal issue?
Well, if you look at the house that was there, it obviously had ceilings that were less than 8 foot, and were probably in the neighborhood of 6.5 or 7. If you look at the
So you might not even be able to meet the code. if you
So,
want to go
yeah,
too-
that becomes a building code issue.
Yeah.
So, limiting it to the exact height would probably be problematic with all the older homes that we have here. And, you everybody knows the old Chesapeake house, they didn't spend much time upstairs, so they only built them like 5 feet high in some instances.
Yeah, because most of your ceilings are, well, in the new house, usually 8 foot. There's exception code, kitchen ceilings, bathroom ceilings can be 7 foot, but you don't never see it. I mean, everything's usually 8 foot.
But then you have a pitch on either 5.7 or,
It gives you no requirements on your real pitch. If you do different pitches, just for materials you can put on. So if you're less than 312, you got to use a different roof material and things like that, or double your paper up, or things like that for the manufacturing construction. But pitches don't get to no pitches, it's just to make quality and type of material that you use.
If that house
So I mean, you could have a house, we've had houses built in different areas before where you got less than a 112 pitch on there, and they use membrane on it, because they're trying to be underneath the height.
yeah, that house for 2 stories, even if it had 10-foot ceilings,
Mhm.
it wouldn't look like that.
no,
Right.
no.
It wouldn't look like that. It would be, it would be probably 10 foot short, 10 or so. And that would probably mean a lot.
And this was a recommendation just to get the conversation started.
Yes.
You know, obviously needs some thought and
Mhm.
and some consideration to the actual heights of building code as well. But it seems to, if you're going to start building new houses in existing neighborhoods, and certainly design of new houses is changed in the last 150 years or so. But if you're going to be building new houses in existing neighborhoods, you should give some consideration to the fact that you don't want to build something so terribly out of character or out of scale, in this case, with the existing neighborhood, that it devalues the,
And I think the average setback would be another aspect that you'd want to incorporate in any change.
well, yeah, I mean, the average setback, I mean, it's been used a million times. It's very good because it allows you to.
Yes, to
the-
use
the
those lots.
The reason it was put in there was to keep the character of,
Exactly.
of the existing neighborhood. Because if you tore one of those homes down, and then all of a sudden your new house has to go back 25 feet, you'd be riding down the street thinking there's no house there, and all of a sudden it's like riding up to a big parking spot and finding out there's a motorcycle in it, right?
And given the size of the lot, you could accommodate the loss of the front footage by extending the rear footage.
Some of it, it depends on what type of septic system they got in there, where they got to put it at, with those holes on what they can get in there.
That's an existing system that's,
Now they have put a new system.
they
back
put an
up.
Allen system in,
Yeah, they put, yeah. there's-
used up most of the backyard.
Yeah.
How high is the foundation on that house?
That house there, I think
Roughly.
was
4 blocks?
5 blocks.
Is that higher than the flood elevation? Some people get it up higher, I guess, just for
I-
flood insurance.
I do not have the
discounts.
flood elevation to answer that correctly.
Yeah, you don't have the final.
It's in a 4-foot zone. Street.
The steps are right to the sidewalk, so how many steps
On
would
the
that be?
corner of Anderson Avenue, right there by Teapot's house, there's a coast geodetic survey marker that is right around 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's in a 4-foot zone, so you're gonna have to build it 6 with 2-foot freeboard, so you're talking about
3
just
foot.
a little over 3 feet above grade.
Mm-hmm.
That's an estimate.
At least 4 sidewalks.
And you think of, the other thing you don't really think of too is what type of mechanical they put in there. If they put duct underneath of it, then that raises another 18 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, our code requires all mechanical to
Well,
be.
that could be at flood elevation, don't
No,
have
all
to fit.
mechanical is 2 foot
That changed
When did that change?
last year.
last year.
The thing we caught you before you did one like that.
Has to be 2 feet, say again, 2 feet above flood?
Yep, yep.
The
Everything's
base
No,
elevation.
on that one.
everything's 2 foot above base flood elevation.
Oh, okay.
So if you're 4 foot, you need to be a 6
So you
foot.
get another 4 foot.
And that says
before
your
you-
top of floor and all mechanical.
The ducts and everything are included in that.
Yep.
It is. Now, it wasn't at first, when it was first adopted, the freeboard, the ductwork could be just above base flood elevation, but FEMA forced us to change that. The council adopted it last year.
Does that apply to any replacement?
If
Or
you see
existing?
50% substantial improvements or damage, So if you're renovating a house and you see 50% value of that structure, then everything's supposed to be brought into,
Brought to code, or 50% of code.
you've got to be brought in full compliance.
If the value of your renovation exceeds 50% of the value of the existing structure, then you
Oh,
have to bring
okay,
everything into
okay,
new
yeah, yeah.
compliance. And that would
But
include-
just to replace a unit,
No,
because,
no,
you're going from
that
one.
obviously is.
And usually, and we don't see them anyway because
Put a
everything
new
required
blower
a
in,
permit
it doesn't
on.
matter, okay.
Now, why was that changed for the mechanical? Because you're on a job like that, you're adding, that's another 3 feet, you're causing somebody to build it that much higher. Why, I mean, why did that change? Was that something that they had to, is that just something that y'all,
FEMA forced.
FEMA?
Yeah.
Replacement costs. They don't want to fund the replacement costs.
Mhm.
It seems to me at the time, that was a big points issue too.
Yes.
It meant a lot. It meant, I don't know, 10% or something like that.
Of course, one good thing about the new equipment for HVAC, people's using mini splits and stuff now, so a lot of ductwork is being eliminated.
I guess, do you want the recommendation to come from the planning commission to the ordinance committee, or should we address it as the commission, and come up with a
Well, I think we're
recommendation to present to council?
The planning commission generally recommends right to council. The ordinance committee doesn't usually deal with zoning.
Okay,
That's
because
planning-
it is totally zoning, so, okay.
That's planning commission's purview.
Well, personally, I have no problem with saying that the setback should, the average setback should be the consideration. And the original height of the structure should be a consideration. How you word that, I don't know.
Yeah, but the only problem is these old houses, the ceilings are low and you can't use them as a guide because they're below flood elevation. The lumber is smaller, and they're gonna be considerably lower than a new house.
Again,
But as a builder, if I said to you, I want you to meet the average setback for the existing houses, and I want you to go no higher than what the original structure was, given FEMA's requirements and
As long as I can do it within
building
the law.
code requirements.
As long as I can build it within the building code, you can do it.
well, again, this was a conversation starter.
Yes.
And a suggestion.
Yeah.
So, we can come back to you with some recommendations.
Yeah.
But it needs to be studied, and we need to go around and apply it to some situations around the island so that we can see what you don't find out how something works until you start applying it. And once you do that, you start seeing the issues with what you.
No, I was just throwing that out to get it started, get it
Right,
on ground.
And we just want discussion because we have so many concerns
Mhm.
and calls about it, Usually we don't bring something up, not unless we get a lot of questions on it, and they meet code, so you really can't deny it. So do we need to change? Do we need to keep it the same? Do we need to amend it? Do we,
And what about the cottages? Have you gotten calls about the cottages? 'Cause I've gotten calls. Can't they jam them a little tighter?
Now were they compliant? I mean, I'm supposing that they are.
Because they're not considered main structures, right?
No, they're all in the cottage rental units.
Because they're owned by one person, right?
How's the square footage set up for that? Is that the main structure has to be so many square feet? and
10,
Each one's got to be a certain
3,000
amount?
each one, Yeah,
But don't you have to have a certain amount of parking for each one?
you do. 1 9 by 18 parking spot for each
Bedroom?
bedroom approved by the Accomack County Health Department. I get a lot of application, somebody buys a existing home and they want to put 4 bedrooms, because it was usually 4 bedrooms. So when I get a business license for that, I send that business license to the Accomack County Health Department and get them to review that septic system to see what's approved for that many bedrooms. They said, no, it's only a 3-bedroom, which 90% on the island are, most of them are 2-bedroom, then I deny it, and they have to resubmit the form to.
But then you have a rental agent saying it'll accommodate 4 people.
But the health department's only approved it for 3 bedrooms, so, and that's what Mark approves them on, and they get mad at it, but what can you say? You're gonna overload the septic system based on what the health department says you can put in there?
Right.
Who wants to be in that
You
position?
know, how do you really enforce it? I don't know, because.
That's
you know,
been a nightmare from day one.
Because you can rent me a house and I can show up, you know, it's a 3-bedroom, I can show up with 30 people. You know, you just don't,
That happens.
but we try to discourage it by getting the approvals, and they know it's, you know, we're just not saying, yeah, do what you want. And that, but if something does happen, we go through the process, if their system fails, the health department has denied it, and so we've done what we're supposed to do.
And I can tell you, overloading a house is no problem. When I owned and operated a motel and I lived there, it was a job trying to keep people not
Yeah,
overloaded.
I-
And you're living there watching people all the time, so having a house, it's very difficult.
Oh, how many houses have we built on this island with 2 bedrooms, 2-bedroom approval and 4 empty other rooms, dens, rec
2 bedrooms
rooms,
and a
et
den.
cetera, and then sofa beds and whatever. Yeah, it's a nightmare. But are we at the point then, Mark or Mike, that you want to come up with some thoughts from what we've expressed here?
Okay.
We can come up with some options for you, like I said.
And bring it back to our next session.
Now, in that neighborhood, how much did, when the new FEMA map came out, what's the floodplain difference?
Most
From
of
the
them
old
are
house to the new house?
Well, the old one was 8 foot above sea level, and like I said, the USGS marker, which is right there on the corner of Anderson Avenue, is just over 3 feet above sea level, and it's flush with the top of the sidewalk. So, under the old datum, but prior to, was it May of 2015?
Maybe.
They would have to go to 8 feet, which means they're only 5 feet above the sidewalk. Under the
So
new
lower.
datum, they have to be at 4 foot base flood elevation plus 2 feet
So you're
freeboard, so
6 feet.
6 feet above sea level, which is about 3 feet above the sidewalk. Now, the difference there is the old datum and new datum are 9 inches difference. The new datum is 9 inches lower than the new datum, the old datum, I'm sorry. So you've got that to contend with too, but.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, you took the average height of the roof and then averaged whatever gave them the difference in the
It may
elevation
look,
that they had to go up.
it may look like, what we come up with may look like you take the average height, the average height of the surrounding structures, but that height shall not be lower than whatever it takes the building code, 2 stories at 9 feet for each story plus a 412 roof, which would be minimum for shingles or something like that. It may be that you can't be, that the minimum, it may be that the average existing structures is 25 feet, but the minimum height for practical building is 31 feet, in which case you could apply the minimum. You can't contradict the building code regardless of what you do.
Okay. Anything else? Any thoughts? Item number 3, discussion on travel trailer parks.
So, we've had some discussion recently on, if you're looking at on our code, we got a definition for a trailer park, but it's for a sold lot. So we got something that says we got trailer park, we really had nothing to discuss it. So we want to take that out of the code and not even have a trailer park, because it's for a single sold lot. Everything else will fall underneath of a campground. So we got a definition there, but we have nothing to apply that definition to.
The last issue I recall was when the Chincoteague Inn asked to reestablish, quote, the trailer park on Taylor Street. It was determined there was not enough square footage since Ross had cut that piece of
Right.
ground off to the back of the property. The existing trailer park's now
5 acres,
5 acres,
or new ones.
new.
Right.
Everything else is grandfathered.
Right, so here's the discussion I had was, somebody told me I'd buy a piece of land and do a trailer park, because it's said it's in the code. But if I go with a trailer park, I have no area, I have no square footage, I have nothing to apply to regulate.
Is
So-
Meyer Pond considered an RV park or a trailer park?
This is the definition for that on the board here. This is a travel trailer park on a sold lot. Premises where travel trailers are parked in conjunction with travel, recreation, or vacation. Permanent additions may not exceed the square footage of the original mobile unit. An accessory building on the lot may not be more than 96 square feet. Minimum of 5-foot setback required for all structures. So, we recently had an application for a business that wanted to put travel trailers in and rent them. We don't have a definition for that. We have travel trailers as they pertain to sold lots, which is Meyer Pond, what's the other one?
Bay Colony, or
Yeah,
Bay,
yeah,
Bayfront,
Bayshore, whatever,
Bay, yeah,
Bayfront.
by Cat Bob's, on the left.
But the recent application for the new business going in at Captain Bob's, wanted to put travel trailers in as rentals, where they're all gonna be owned by the owner who's gonna rent them.
No,
We don't have a definition for travel trailers, so we only have it for sold lots. So they became a campground because the only place that travel trailers are mentioned in the zoning code, other than travel trailers on sold lots, is in a campground. And they don't even call them travel trailers, they call them something else. What is it?
RV or something?
Yeah, RV camper trailer, I think.
Camper
was
trailer.
Camper.
Section B.
Is it RV and camper trailers or just camper trailers?
It gives you a list.
Tourist camps, travel trailer camps, recreation camps, family campgrounds, camping resorts, camping communities, or any other place, parcel of tract of land by whatever name called, on which 3 or more campsites are occupied or intended for occupancy, or facilities are established or maintained wholly or in part for the accommodation of camping units for periods overnight or longer, whether the use for campsites and or facilities is granted gratuitously or by rental fee, the minimum lot area should be 5 acres.
And it's transient? That's not,
So Mark classified him as a campground.
right.
He said, well, I'm not a campground, I don't have any campsite, travel trailers, and that's the only thing we have in the zone code that mentions travel trailers that's not associated with a sold lot.
Does he have 5 acres there? to be
Yes.
campground?
Once they vacate the property lines, they will have 5 acres.
And that comes up
March
Thursday,
6th.
or March the 6th,
March the 6th.
regular meeting.
I think they're both almost the same thing.
Yeah, except for people who live in the other ones.
Well, if you go back to the sold lot definition, they're on individual lots that have setbacks.
Which, or most of them are not permitted by right except for an R4 to start with.
So he'd rather have it be a campground, he can get more in there.
No, because campground, once it's campground, campground we don't regulate,
Yeah.
nothing's regulated by the
So
state.
do we want to regulate?
The size of campers right now, we can't make them so small.
whatever he does, it's gonna be nice down there anyways. I stopped there today. I don't know too many
Well,
people
it's not only
that,
that, when you got to look at, we still got a lot of tracts of land on the island that's 5 acres or
Could be.
more, so you could have this problem come up
Yeah.
again.
You were saying you were down there, you thought it was,
yeah, I mean, well, I said, what are you guys doing here? They dug down maybe 2.5 feet, put the big rocks, and that's gonna be all their parking. I'm like, no one around here really does all that. I mean, they do it right, you know, so. The money that they just put in the dirt, you know, the ground, it's crazy.
Or is it consensus that we just should keep everything as a campground and not even worry about the trailer park?
You'd have to create a different entity, a travel trailer park.
given experiences up to now, can you live with that?
I guess it depends how much somebody pushes in trying to find loopholes in the ordinance.
When the original request was made, was there any issue with that, or,
No, not originally, no.
I mean, was he inequal to your response?
Yes, I think, but it all, I think, depends on when you get approval from the other agencies on what they call it sometimes too, makes a big difference. So a lot of avenues could fall into that, what makes it. So it's kind of discussion, so I can do a little more research on it and propose something, or
If nothing else, there's some language that we probably ought to clean up. If you look under section 311, special exceptions, special use permits, conditional use permits, campers, travel trailer parks. To be consistent, that should be / sold lots. Otherwise, it implicates maybe a different animal, which we don't have a definition for. I have to say, once we put zoning in town code on Unicode, it's so easy to search things and find things. We're going to find a lot of these things now. I just searched travel trailer parks for that, sold lots, and it popped up wherever it was, and then it popped up.
And that highlights it like that?
Highlights
yeah,
it.
highlights everything.
It's very easy to find things now. But you see what I'm saying? If we're going to be consistent, this should really say travel trailer parks, sold lots. To be consistent with the definition, so there's no confusion there.
We can make that, we can make that. We can make that happen. You can bring that to our next meeting.
And this is some of the things Mark's finding. He spends a lot of time, and I'll talk for him here, because he won't put it. He spends a lot of time researching these things, and when you find an inconsistency in the zoning code and wrestle with it, you don't want to be seen as granting favors for somebody, but you can't infer things that aren't actually there. We're keeping a list of things that need to be cleaned up. This is just one.
There's always housekeeping stuff to do.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of gray area.
Well,
Yeah.
the circumstances change constantly that you
That's
face
true.
with. Yeah, that's
Nobody envisioned this animal 20 years ago.
Right.
when
Yeah.
they were good.
Most everything now is a hybrid situation on pretty well everything anymore. New products, new looks, new ideas.
Okay. Item number 4, reviews accessory structures. Once again, what is and what isn't?
Okay, so accessory structures is, question, had a couple vacant lots that they want to put accessory structures on. So real to have an accessory structure, you gotta have a main building. Because the accessory stock, not made anything. There's a couple calls, which I put them right here on the memo to you, is that, accessory structure use, an accessory structure shall be attached to the main structure. We got a clause that says may be considered a main structure is meeting the required front setbacks of the area. So we got the possibility of having a accessory structure on a vacant lot, 25 feet back from the front, and really don't give you no other side setbacks. So how do you regulate that, and how do we want that?
Can I offer this? Prior to incorporation of the town, there was a property that accessory structure was placed on the property. And to do that, the requirements at the time were the 5-foot side setback, 25-foot setback in the front and back, you know. And the structure was 16 by 16. Essentially a storage shed. Although when the applicant went down to county, they were asked, is this going to be a residence? No, you know, but apparently there were residences being built, not much bigger or smaller than that.
So you were required 25 foot from the rear?
Five foot
Or did-
on the side, 25 foot front and back,
Front back.
which was easy to do.
Well, that kind of almost meets the,
That was prior to incorporation.
right, okay.
Subsequent to that, we've had requests for, that I can remember, for like barns and things of that nature, that I think were approved based upon that concept. Now, are you experiencing an issue where
Well, I'm getting
they're
some,
different than that, or?
well, I'm getting some questions calling in a vacant lot, they want to put a accessory structure there. Don't give you a whole lot of definition of, but some of these accessory structures, you know, they're 20 by 30. You know, they're not,
Garage.
you're not your 10 by 16 that you can store
Right.
tools in and stuff like that. So if you build an accessory structure, you're building to a different code utility building. So, and if they change it or do something in there in the midst of it, I know it gets to a code enforcement, but do we want to be chasing things down? Or do we want to try to hit it off before we get things? Now, we don't have a lot of vacant lots on the island, but somebody could start to a hashtag that's vacant, or we got a lot of vacant lots now that we could have this building sitting here.
I ran into this a few years ago when Mark was working at the county. A guy who was working for me wanted to build a new house. And he wanted to build a pole barn first as an accessory structure, and then live in that while he was building his house. And I know him, he was going to build a house. The county says, no, you can't do that. And I thought it was crazy at the time. But I understand it, because if he built that accessory structure as an accessory structure, you're allowed to be 5 feet from the rear property line. And if you decide not to build the house, all of a sudden you've got built your main structure 5 feet from the rear property line. And it's gonna be in effect the main structure, and we've allowed you to build that, encroaching on the main structure setbacks.
But you don't have the legal right to say you built that as an accessory structure and you cannot utilize it as a main structure once you've established the fact that.
Well,
You can, but it's hard to go back to enforce it once it's there.
the horse is at the barn running fast as it can at that point.
I
It's
mean,
hard to catch it, you know.
Read through some of the BCA cases, here in Island, we have some garages that were built with storage above them, then were converted to living that are 5 feet from the back, 5 feet from the side, and then they had to go for the BCA to get approval to use them as living.
Yeah, you gotta have septic for that. I mean, you gotta have septic approval from the health
Yeah,
department.
yeah, you
and
get
everything
some
else.
put to, yeah, but it's,
Yeah, but if they get a septic system put in,
Well,
the
they're not in
BCA
compliance,
says,
they're
yeah,
not-
go ahead and do
Yeah,
it.
but they're not in compliance with the setbacks. So,
No, but it's already done deal though.
but, I mean, my opinion, I talked to Mark the other day about it, my opinion is an accessory building is an accessory building, whether it's on your lot where you're living at, or if it's on your lot down the street. Say, I got a camper, and I got nowhere to store it, and I want to build me a pole barn down the street, and then you're gonna tell me that I got to take 20 feet off of it just because I got to stay in the setbacks if I got a small lot? I mean, if Joe next door has a lot more land than I do, and he builds an accessory building that's 5 feet from the line, but I got a lot that's right next to it that don't have a house on it, but it's not in compliance to have a house on it, just saying I can't do it. I mean, to me, that's just telling people that how they can't use their land, you know, I mean, to me, an accessory
Well, that's
building,
what
an
I
accessory
thought,
building.
as long as it's initially identified as an accessory structure,
Yeah,
you know, the danger, I guess, that Mark's facing is if the BZA says, okay, go ahead and make it a main structure. Otherwise, there's no legal right to do that.
So reading that definition there for maybe used as a main structure, it don't give us no, it says 25-foot front. It don't give us no side or rear yard setback with that.
well, it's 5 feet, right?
You can assume that, but they can argue that because it's telling me that I can use this building as a main structure
Well,
as
if
long
you're-
as I meet the 25-foot front yard setback.
I don't see how you can change it. If you're using that as an accessory structure, how can you turn around and change it to a house? It's
Right.
not meeting the flood, it's not meeting, it don't have septic, it don't, I mean, I don't see,
Is there anything that
See
says
where
an
the issue is.
accessory structure can't have septic or a toilet
It is not.
and a kitchen?
It is not.
So accessory structure can have all of that.
Yep.
So you can build it as an
You can
accessory
build-
structure.
you can
put a
build an
bathroom
accessory
in it,
structure
put a kitchen
workshop.
in it.
yeah, but you can't
We can't
put,
put a
you can't
kitchen.
put, you can't put a bathroom below flood elevation. So you're still, a garage is a garage, you know, what I mean, I want to live in the garage, but I'm not supposed to put the septic, I mean, you
Nothing
can't,
says gotta
you
build
can't,
Accessory structure on the ground.
you can't really, you know what I mean, law all that stuff. You can't, you know, if somebody does it, they do it. They're doing wrong, but they do it.
Well, and like Mark was just saying, give me an example, someone built a garage, room over the garage is, and it has accessory structure, now the room over the garage is habitable.
I have a two-story garage. And one of the first things Kenny asked me was, you're not putting facilities in that, are you? Because you're not allowed to, as I understand it at the time. The facilities were designed for the main structure, i.e. the number of bedrooms. That's
Well, I don't
what you're
think the code
approved
actually
for.
says that.
You're punishing a
Could you
few.
could you put a bathroom in?
Yeah.
If it's above the flood.
And it is, it's 14 feet up, for God's
Yeah.
sakes, it's above the flood.
And it's been done.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
that's kind
By a
of,
lot of people.
Yeah.
but you're gonna punish the people that wanna do right, just wanna build a garage, just
Yeah.
because you got the 10% that want to fudge around the wall and try to put a room up there. It's kind of, you're penalizing a lot of people just for that. And I don't like to take the rights of people's away from the land. And as long as they're doing everything in compliance,
Right.
I mean, to me, like I said,
Yeah,
an
but-
accessory
but
building's an accessory building. My house takes up my whole yard.
And
I don't have room for an accessory building. Believe me, I need one.
You need a
But,
football.
but yeah, but now you're saying I can't do it because,
And you're right, because recently I had one guy that had a place removed, built a garage with storage above it, proceeded probably what they should have, applied for permits to take care of the problem, and was denied from the health department. Because it didn't have sewage.
That would be the stopgap.
What can
But
we,
that still doesn't address your question on the accessory.
Well, I mean, I guess
Being
you-
a main structure.
Right, so do we put in wording that if you allow it a accessory structure on a vacant lot, do we put setbacks on it to says you meet 25-foot front and 5 or 10-foot, whatever or meet the zoning requirement for side yards for that district? So like if you are.
then again, in that same district, if this guy's got enough land, he can put his 5 feet from the line, but I can't put mine 5 foot from the line.
No, but I'm
So you're
saying.
making me go from a 40-foot building to a 20-foot
No,
building.
what I'm saying was you put the minimum setbacks for the accessory structure in there. Right now, in that clause says you got to be 25 feet from the line, don't give us no setbacks for
From the
rear or
front.
sides.
From the front.
Yes, 25 foot
So it
front.
don't state 5 foot?
No. Now, if I go back to the R1, R2, R3, R4 would tell me accessory structure is 5 feet from the property line.
Rear and side, but not front.
Rear and side, 25
Rear
front.
and side, yes.
Right. It's all standard 25 front.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing would change if you were corner lot, you could be pushed 15 foot.
How you could change it, I
Or-
mean, is it the bathrooms is what concerning you, or what's really concerning you?
Well, I don't want to have vacant lots and have a building sit in the center of it that's really accessory use and it's gonna be turned into something different and we're not building it to a certain thing.
The accessory structure at some point can become the main structure, especially if you build a pole barn.
Well, you can do that on, say, if you got a lot that's big enough to put a house on it, you build an accessory, you can build the accessory structure there, 5 foot from the line, put a bathroom in it, somebody's living upstairs, so that's okay, but the guy that's got it on the lot, but I'm saying that, but you're saying it's just the people that's got the vacant lots that are doing that. I mean, you're letting one do it and not letting the other guy do it.
No, but then if you do the accessory structure as the main building and it don't meet current code and then they want to develop it, they're already there, so then they're adding on to it, saying, okay, I already got this building here, now I'm gonna make this my main building now, which it is the main building, because accessory structure is the main building, and now I want to turn it to living space.
And you can't turn it over in space because you're not within the,
Right. Well, and then it was said, no, my building was already here.
well, that's fine, your building's there, but hey, guess what, you're not living in it.
So just trying to hit all stuff before we get to that point where,
Yeah. I still say an accessory building is an accessory building, I don't.
I
don't
think
think
you
you
have to
should
go back
penalize
to the
people for
original
it.
permit. The original permit says it was the accessory building.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's written in stone,
That's all it is, that's all it can ever be.
you know.
Yeah, so how can we give
The
that
fact-
power
The
to?
fact that the
Accessory
BZA
building.
may
That's it,
choose
nothing
to
else.
Nothing else.
address it differently, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a legal issue.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we enforce the legal issue?
Well, the fact that he would turn down,
No,
Yeah.
it became a main structure later on.
oh,
Yeah, how do you
Because
enforce
it's
it
not,
then?
because it's not,
It-
it's not within the setbacks.
but then
No,
you,
yeah, no, I get
Yeah,
that,
if it's
but
within the
how
setbacks,
can
you
Mark
wanna
Miller
build it-
enforce it so?
but then you force
You
that to
can't, you
legal.
can't enforce the ones that are already there now. I mean, the ones that, if you got a house there and you got that, how you gonna enforce those?
I mean, you've got
It's the
issues
same-
where
same thing.
you've got a main structure and somebody wants to put a porch,
Mm-hmm.
and they infringe on the setback.
Well, that's attached to the house, you can't.
You can't do that, but
No.
you can if you go to the BZA and get a variance.
Well, you can't, yeah.
Because it's done
That
all the
way-
time.
That way you can, yes,
I mean, it's always done. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that option's there.
yeah.
So the same option would exist.
And you have to go to the building board. Zoning, BZA could not allow you, am I right on this?
No, they go to the BCA.
No, but if you wanted to use it, if you wanted to use a, hypothetical, if you wanted to use, you put a accessory building, a pole barn, a shed, whatever, on the property, and all of a sudden you wanna make that livable space in your main structure. BZA could grant
Yeah.
variance for that?
Yeah.
'Cause-
Yeah, because you're going by setbacks, so the only thing you're going by.
But I'm not talking about zoning, if you got a bunch of building issues. you
Yeah,
gotta
but it would not the building, but yeah, but they would go to the
Because it's
board.
not built to energy code, it's not built to
Right, correct,
elevation,
right.
you got a bunch of
Right.
issues that are building issues.
Right,
not
but
zoning,
that will go before the building code appeals until I find violations, we go through it and I deny them, and then they appeal a decision somewhere.
Because you've had that situation where somebody took a garage at ground level, an attached garage,
Right,
made it living space, which,
right.
Totally
Well, you got
does not
two
meet the
issues.
code.
You got two issues, you're changing
and then you got a
use.
variance.
Right, you're changing use, and then you got to go from use into the building code. Whether the first thing to be able to use was permitted there by right or not.
Right.
That's through zoning.
But to answer your question, maybe, we've had issues on the island where the attached garage is an issue, that's not all the time. And we've had other issues when you have unattached, obviously accessory structures that are attempted to be lived in.
Yeah.
But it would be more visible, somebody living in it, if it was on a lot by itself than it would be if it was on a lot with another house, but there's already vehicles in the
Let's just say
yard.
that everybody's lot's not visible from the street.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of lots not visible from the street.
And you'll always have that, and you'll never be able to police it. That's why I say, why punish somebody for what somebody else is doing?
Well, we had the challenge here, 2 years ago, relevant to secondary use. We're having, have we experienced any more
No,
issues like that?
no.
Because that was one of the things we agreed that we would keep our ears
Yep.
open to, should that become a
Yeah, have not yet.
type of issue again.
Bob, you have a question?
No.
Okay.
But they, in the past, hasn't permits been issued to accessory buildings on lots by themselves?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they have.
I mean, why are we addressing it now with what's happened to bring this problem up?
Because you get more questions where, are they really gonna be accessory structures?
I mean, has anybody done it? Has anybody called? I mean, what brought this up?
Well, the question I'm getting, I'm telling them, if they want to do the accessory structure the way they want to do it, I'm telling them they got to meet the setbacks of the main structure. That's what I'm
But
telling
you
them.
didn't do that in the past,
No.
so we're just starting this? I mean,
I don't know what's planned, but if somebody calls me and they want to do the main structure, I've been telling, okay, you can put a accessory structure on there, but you got to meet the setbacks of the main structure.
but if the main structure is an accessory structure, what's the difference? And the guys out in the streets
Setback.
is got the same thing, he's got the same size garage, he just has a bigger lot. I mean, if it's not been a problem and an issue, why are we making it an issue?
Well, I think we just identified some of the problems.
I got you.
We're starting to see people,
Better to
And
be.
can you name a case that this
we're
has
not gonna
happened?
name a case on there,
No.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean,
But there are.
yeah, I mean,
I think that instead of,
I mean, is it becoming that big of an issue?
It's becoming an issue, but
Yeah.
rather than wait till it's a huge
Mhm.
issue, we bring it to the planning commission to see if they want to
Gotcha.
get it on.
rather than react to it, if you plan ahead, it's a lot easier.
As homes are more expensive, as property values go up, this is more enticing to do than, I mean, we've got a travel trailer park on sold lots, that's specifically low-income vacation houses, so obviously people are gonna try what they can, to make things cheaper, and that's one of the solutions they're coming up with, which we're just seeing it happen.
Well, for purposes of discussion this evening, relevant to the accessory structure, you have some vehicle that you can use at the moment,
Yes.
and you can, or I would think, we would support the fact that if it's identified initially as an accessory structure, that's what it is. If it's a duck, it's a duck. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Item 5, discussion of the public septic system. Wahoo!
All right, Mr. Chairman, just to give you a little background here, I think everybody knows the town did not purchase, but the town has taken possession of Sunset Bay's sewer plant. The plan is for us to, and right now, Sunset Bay Utilities has leased that plant back from us. They're leasing it at a very good rate and operating it at their cost until such time as we can get our act together and a few of the legalities done, and we can transfer those plants to HRSD, who will then operate them within their system. One of the things that HRSD wants to see from the town of Chinkville before they take over is the town's comprehensive plan deal with connections and how the sewer area will be identified and some housekeeping items like that. To give you some more background, and I know this is coming late because I just put it in here today, but the wastewater management plan, which was drafted by the consultant, which was hired by the wastewater advisory committee, gave their final report June of 13. This is on the internet right now. If you go to our website,
Right.
look up the meeting, it's in the agenda packet. If you haven't read this, it's a pretty good document.
Yeah.
And pretty much what it predicted has come true. I put it in there because there's some good information in there. It gives you chapter and verse on what has been and what's being done now, the federal regulations. Better yet, it identifies things that have to be done in order to have public sewer. And actually, the method that this plan used or recommended for sewer on Chincoteague was exactly what we are now doing with Sunset Bay. And that is, it recommended that before we attempt to get an all-encompassing sewer system, which requires everyone to mandatorily hook up, that we attempt to put a limited system in covering the downtown area and Maddox Boulevard. And they say exactly that. There's a map in here that shows the service area. It also recommends the type of collection system. It gives some prices, and it has an alternative matrix where it recommends or gives you the pros and cons for each alternative based on a type of plant, a type of collection system, and things like that. So if you haven't read through this document, I haven't read through it lately. I just did it the other day. It's very good. It's a very good document in giving you the basics. It's written not from an engineer standpoint, but from a layman standpoint. This right here gives you the three basic kinds of collection systems: heavy, vacuum, and low pressure.
Right.
Explains the pros and cons of each. This is giving you the pros and cons of the different types of treatment systems. I think wastewater treatment, wastewater advisory committee recommended a RIB, which is rapid infiltration basin. It would have to be pumped back to the mainland and basically, or for lack of a better term, farming water to clean it. That was a non-starter because we couldn't find anybody that wanted to take Chincoteague sewage. That's a picture of Cape Charles's sewer plant, which we actually went down and toured while we were, the committee did. They go through the methods of disposal, how to finance the plant, everything's covered. Here's your matrix of alternatives, which, and I know it's a little small here, but it, again, reading through this kind of gives you an idea of what they were pointing us towards, and we're actually doing that very thing right now. I put that in there just in case you wanted to take some time to read it, but they also recommended a phase-in, and Phase 1A utility service was basically down Main Street. Phase 1B service area was Maddox Boulevard and Main Street, and that is actually what the council's envisioned for using the extra capacity with the sewer system. And I'm gonna stop there and start on something else. And here's the findings and recommendations. Again, which I'm gonna take time to read all, but it goes right down very close to what we're actually doing now. And there is a map at the end of this. I'll turn that down. Which shows the service area being, and this is Sunset Bay right here.
Yep.
Right now, the collection system starts at Sunset Bay, proceeds north on Main Street to Maddox Boulevard, almost to Maddox Boulevard, just short of the bridge in the old Landmark Plaza. That's where the system stops right now. But they envisioned turning up Maddox for Phase 1B and going all the way to the museum, which is exactly the route that the council has identified as being the preferred area. Now, again, HRSD wants to see the rules and regulations governing this in our comprehensive plan. I've talked to them. They've provided me with some comprehensive plan from another locality that covers what they'd like to see. I'll make that available to you as well. The part of it that I mined was only 3 pages, and it came from the city of Chesapeake. And this is actually here right now. But I'll go through the plant with you a little more, just to give you the whole background. The plant itself has a 39,000 gallon per day capacity. I think most of you know the businesses that are hooked up to it because it does go down Main Street from Sunset Bay. Right now, it's doing Sunset Bay, Fire has one EDU, Bill's Restaurant is purchased 7 EDUs. The town bathrooms there are hooked up, and Don's Seafood is hooked up with 7 EDUs. The bank across the street, Taylor Bank, has 1 EDU. Shinkatiki is hooked up, I'm not sure how many they have. And on down to the Key West Cottages project is also now connected. They haven't started operating, of course, but they are connected. So those are some of the businesses hooked up. The council's vision for this is to provide additional sewer down Main Street that all of a sudden will make all of those buildings and properties viable for continued operation, because as you know, the old C2 district that was down there, heavy commercial, allowed you to build right up to the property line, and many of those buildings were built right up to the property line to the point where they don't have any room for any kind of in-ground sewage or above-ground sewage. So this extra capacity that we have will provide a solution for those businesses downtown, and we hope will revitalize the downtown area more than it is now. I should say that when we took over the plant, not only did the plant convey to the town, but also a permit, which has not been used, an approved permit for discharge for 37,500 gallons per day. The issue is that the plant can't handle an extra 37,500 gallons a day. So HRSD, in our discussions with them, has agreed to provide that extra capacity. Right now, what they have on the board, and this is all in planning, is to replace both of those plants down there. And I think one of the plants was, I think Junior Britton put in, and that's how old it is back when he owned the property. And the other one was, I think, placed when Sunset Bay came along. So there are actually 2 there now.
Right.
HRSD wants to replace both of them, and the plants they have on the board each have 65,000 gallons capacity, which 2 of them will give you a total of 130,000 gallons per day capacity. We don't have that much permanent capacity, but if they replaced those plants with new plants at 130,000 gallons, we would attempt to obtain the additional capacity from the DEQ. It would certainly, both of those plants would certainly handle the 37,000 gallon permit that we already have that's not being used, and give us some immediate availability.
Would they consolidate locations or use the same 2 locations?
Same location, it would be at Sunset Bay.
All at Sunset Bay, not at
Landmark?
Lambert.
No, there was a discharge point down there, and that's still in the permit, but that wouldn't be used.
Right, okay.
The HRSD was trying to get a new discharge point, which is just to the south of the building for Sunset Bay, and abandon the others. But again, all this has to be worked out with DEQ. Now, so we have, and I should say that this isn't widely known, but it's not a secret either, but HRSD is also talking to the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard doesn't want to be in the sewage business either. And if they are successful in negotiating with the Coast Guard, HRSD would obtain their permit, which I've heard is 6,000 gallons, but I don't have any paperwork to that effect. So that would add another 6,000 gallons to the permitted capacity, and I doubt seriously the Coast Guard uses that much on a daily basis. So all of that adds to the permitted capacity.
42,000.
We think it would be a great deal for the town. And like I said, and right now we have an agreement in place, an MOU, and we have a formal agreement with development. We're working on right now. We have to go back and do some legal work. We actually have to go back and do an eminent domain suit with the HOA in order to release the property there from the covenants and restrictions. The lawyers tell me, and all the lawyers agree, this is the only way to release it from the covenants and restrictions is to do eminent domain. So we're going back and do that, and the HOA is not going to oppose it. We've already agreed on the price. We're also getting the vacant lot that the HOA has on Main Street, which they use to park their boat trailers on, as part of the eminent again, we've already agreed on the price. So it's a matter of getting the paperwork done, hopefully, and presenting it to a judge who will say, everybody's nodding their heads, so I'll sign. We're hoping that's the way it goes. I've learned in this deal, nothing ever prevents something. In any event, the town will be responsible for building the collection system. And the ARPA committee has basically said that we are going to set aside our ARPA money, of which there's about $2.6 million left of the ARPA, because we have spent money on a few things. But the idea is to take our ARPA money and build a collection system associated with this plan. That'll be associated with this plan. As far as the new plants are concerned, currently there is an amendment to the state budget in both the House and the Senate that our local representatives have put in there. That's good for about $7.5 million that will buy those two plants if it's approved, if it stays in the state's budget. And we're excited about that as well. So, what we're going to charge the planning commission with is to come up with the rules and regulations surrounding, or the guidance, I should say, in the comprehensive plan that'll govern who connects. And it's not just who connects, but it's also, if you read through the documents that I've assembled for you, it's also expansion. HRSD would like to see rules in the comprehensive plan which govern the expansion of the service area and expansion of service, actual service to additional customers on the island. So we have to identify the initial service area and the situation, or the situation as to that we would apply expansion to. And they'd like to see that because they specifically mentioned in the agreement that they will only expand as per the town's comprehensive plan. And if we even have to say that if we're going to change that section of the comprehensive plan, we have to give them notice. So they put them, and they told us this from the very start, the very first meeting we had with them, that we're going to act as per your comprehensive plan. It says we're going to act. So I'll leave this information with you. Again, it's, if you go to the town's website and look up the agenda for tonight's meeting, it's attached to the agenda. So it's easy to read. I'll also provide you with, and I haven't done it yet because I just got it, but the marked up agreement from HRSD, the formal agreement with them to take over the plan, because that does also mention several times our comprehensive plan.
The plan, in response to that, would probably be in the form of a recommendation and an objective, not rules.
Well, that's the way it is in Chesapeake.
Yeah, so, which can be accomplished, but I guess, in your conversations with them, what is their ultimate configuration of the system? Is it island-wide?
They're not there yet. They're actually, almost 2 years ago when we started talking to them, the concern at the time, of course, was this immediate deal, but we also talked to them about the whole northern half of Accomack County, because as you've read, I'm sure, basically the southern and central portions of Accomack County have been taken care of.
Yeah.
But there's no solution yet for northern Accomack County. And as you know, we've got Capistrano Cove, we've got Town of Chincoteague, Atlantic, there's some other communities that could benefit greatly from this. I have not discussed this with Wallops officials, but I can't see how Wallops would be thrilled about being in the sewage business either.
At the time,
that's not their mission.
At the time, we had a sense that Wallops was very amicable to it. Actually, we would be excited about it, really. But,
sure.
And the industrial park now has a tenant, so there's some possibilities there. But I thought that was going to be the push on the northern and Accomack.
Well, again, I don't have this in writing, but my understanding is their permit's about 300,000 gallons a day, which probably not enough to do a lot of good. I mean, if you look at the town of Chincoteague island-wide on a busy day in the summertime, we're using 1 million gallons of water.
Yeah.
so.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even sufficient for Shingley. However, as I was about to say, HRSD, when I spoke to them almost 2 years ago, I spoke to the general manager, and they put up money and commissioned a study, and the study's still ongoing, to look at the whole northern half of Accomack County. I believe it was from just north of Parksley on up to the Maryland line, and try to determine a path and a solution for the northern half of Accomack County. That study, I don't know the status of it right now. I have to talk to them about it in some time, but the study is still ongoing. And they did commission it, they're spending all the time on it. I'm sure that Wallace is going to be part of that study.
But for right now, we're really talking about like phase 1A and 1B.
1B.
Right.
And the extensions to 1A.
Yes, 1A is,
How far
No,
back?
It extends north, the dotted line extends north.
yeah, if you look at the map, it
and south.
extends a little south of where it actually is now and a little north of the bridge as well. When it's actually from Sunset Bay to Landmark, it really is all that we have. But 1B would be turning right on Maddox and
Yeah,
proceeding
going down
all the
to
way
the-
to, I call it McDonald's.
But are they also looking for something more, it'd have to be more general and
We'll have to-
aspirational for the rest of the island?
We'll have to discuss.
Some sort of
That's
plan
really it.
approach?
We'll have to discuss expansion, yes.
Yeah.
And if you look at, and again, I know you haven't seen it because I just put it on here, but if you look at the documents I gave you, and this is Objective 5, this is from Chesapeake's comprehensive plan. This describes how they will conduct themselves and how they will expand their system.
Yeah.
And that's similar to what we have to do. And that's everything all the discussions I've had with HRSD's personnel, their mission is to treat sewage within their service area. And I think everybody knows their service area is all over the Maryland line now. However, they want guidelines and rules and regulations that say, they're just not gonna willy-nilly go out there and spend all the state's money on doing whatever you want. They want to approach this in a normal fashion, so. But everybody I've talked to at HRSD, they understand that's their mandate and that's what they're supposed to do. They just want to do it under their terms, and you can't blame them because, it's their governance.
How soon do you need this?
We're gonna have to knock this out in a couple months.
Okay.
Because right now, the attorneys, in discussions with the attorneys, I've told them, I said, we need to knock this out. We became owners of this plant on December 29th. Owners of these plants. I told the attorneys, in 180 days, we need to have this transferred to HRSD. That's what we're looking for. I mean, the lease, the term of the lease that we have with Sunset Utilities is up to a year, but we're shooting lower than that. We're trying to knock this out in 6 months. The term of the lease, by the way, is up on the day that this plant becomes the property of HRSD. The lease is up on that day.
Do they have a projection on earliest service date that they would look for
Service.
for themselves to take over?
Again, as soon as the eminent domain suit has been completed and all the paperwork and everything, and we actually signed the agreement, HRSD will take over. Now, right now, the plant's being operated by, I think it's ESS, Environmental Systems, which is a contractor that Sunset Bay has been using, Sunset Utilities has been using for quite some time. They also operate every other package plant on the island. They operate them all. HRSD has told me they will not change that relationship, at least in the near term. So it's going to change ownership.
It's to their benefit.
You're not, the same guys that are going there
Yeah.
the day before will be going there the day after and operating. So it'll be a seamless transition.
How about the southern end development? I know we're talking about the harbor, but what about the
Again.
new development?
Again, if we're going to extend, and if you read through this plan, again, I've read so much stuff today, it's either in this comprehensive plan or it's in the HRSD's formal agreement that I just read too. One of them references not leapfrogging the system down the road. They want continuous, we're building it at this point.
Well, it's the
we're
same
starting
thing. It's
here,
the
we're
same
building it at
thing.
this point, we're not going to jump a mile down the road and start there. Now, that being said, I don't know what that distance is. Is it 200 yards? Is it half a mile? Is it 2 miles? I don't know what they consider leapfrogging, but they don't want to send a spider web back to the entire community, you know, pump a little here, pump a little there.
That
So-
leads to bad feelings.
Hmm?
That leads to bad feelings.
Yeah.
And I think you know the KOA, which is under development down there right now, has their own above ground sewage permitted. That's permitted.
Yeah, there's no
It's
overboard
supposed to
on
have
that,
their
it's
own-
strictly in the ground.
So we can adjust our comp plan, or amend, I should say, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So then we make our recommendation, then the council,
Yeah, we
Well-
would,
okay, I'm just,
yeah.
so we don't have to wait till 2025.
You don't have to.
No, we're just
So,
required
yeah,
to-
yeah.
And again, it's a
I'm
recommendation.
just making sure, so, which is good. Now, who's gonna have the requirements, who hooks up? We're gonna get those recommendations. Is the town set it, or are we gonna set that?
They made clear, HRSD made clear to the town early on that the town would retain the right. In fact, they said they wanted nothing to do with telling us who was going to hook up. They wanted the town to retain that right. Now, as far as the method to hook up and what it costs to hook up and things like that, not what it costs, but the method to hook up and what you have to do to hook up, that's HRSD telling me this is the specs you have to meet. But as far as who connects, when, and how much we charge them to connect, and it's gonna be the town charging them to connect, because we are most likely gonna own the collection
Yep.
system.
That's that grant or appropriation, that $7 million, whatever.
No, that's for the two plants.
That's just for the plants
Yeah,
themselves.
Yeah.
no, they got the 2.6 or
Well, if
whatever.
we go out and spend our ARPA money on a collection system, then of course, if you wanna hook up to that, you may be paying for part of that collection system, we'll have to see, you know, all of that has to be worked out, and we'll have consultants help us with that.
Okay.
The user would be interfacing with the town primarily, though. The town would be dealing
Until
with.
such time as the service starts, and then
Okay.
once the service starts, you'd be paying HRSD's standard rate. They've also emphasized that it costs more money to treat sewage in rural communities than it does in metropolitan areas, obviously because of the density. And they blend the rate, so rural communities get a break because we're not paying what it actually costs here.
I saw that, but I could not figure that out in my mind as to how that truly works. It sounded like it was like too good of a gift.
No, well, obviously, if you've got a high-density community, and you've got a connection every 30 feet, then, and you're collecting the same rate from those people as you are from people whose connections may be every
300 feet.
300 or
Right.
300 yards even. Obviously, it costs less money per gallon to treat the ones in the municipal area than it does here. But they charge everybody the same rate.
So it is the same rate.
It's the same
not-
rate.
It's
They
not an
stress that.
adjusted rate.
No, it's the same
Okay.
rate. And they stress that, you know, rural communities benefit from the fact that the metropolitan areas are paying a little bit more than probably costs there, and we're paying a little bit less.
Okay.
Again, we'll write some suggestions, to comp plan.
You
and,
want to be in on this?
Yeah.
As a verbiage. How about, Bob and Mark and yourself? From the verbiage, or? And we can use a lot of the, as you said, we're using a lot of the information that was developed back in 2016 by the wastewater
Yes,
committee, Does that committee need to be resurrected, or?
I don't believe so. The report's pretty comprehensive. It's,
Okay.
And it
Because all the
really-
members are still available
Oh,
except,
they're all
except for
Except for
Spiro.
Yeah. But, when you read through this plan, it so closely
Yeah.
parallels what we're actually doing, and I think it's more than adequate.
I don't want to say that addresses the obvious case, but it does, and it does it pretty well. The tough part is where do you go, what do you do once you get out of 1A and 1B?
Right. Which side street do you pick up first, or which part of the town you pick up first, and how far you go down those streets, or?
We're gonna leave that to the consulting engineers.
And I can take and, copy them to their emails and send them all the deals with package printers, they don't have to look it up.
Yep, we can certainly do that.
You said 180 days, and then, what, they give themselves a 2-year projection to develop it to its functional
Well,
point.
Once that's completed, the time frame is, there's a sunset on our ARPA money. We have to have it under contract by December 31st of '24, and have to have it completely expended by December 31st of '26. So, yeah.
That's about
that-
right.
That's,
That's about right.
it's perfectly doable, and we intend to do it, but,
Okay, everybody agreement? There's
Yep.
no objection to the approach on this, I think it's the way to go.
Mhm.
Does that meet you? Are you okay, Mike?
yes, sir. We'll start putting things together.
What is going on over at Wallops? At the 175 development, the
You
piping,
mean north of the
Power lines?
visitor center,
yes, sir.
or south of the visitor center? I was on a conference call with the director of NASA today, David Pierce, the director for Wallops, and he told me, he said, to talk to Paul Bull, who is the head of facilities there, but it looks to me like we're getting ready to put, there's a lot of conduit there, a large conduit. It looks
Yeah,
like we're getting
They've
ready
already
to
put a huge box in the
Three
ground.
bolts, yeah.
Two bolts, yeah, those are the junction boxes. I think, it looks like we're getting ready to put some high power lines underground.
Yeah.
There's
Instead
enough
of
pipe, there's
running
enough
around
pipe
with
there to
the
reach
horse.
Jenkins.
What I asked Dave today was, if that runway that ends right there is still active, and they don't, they closed it, he said, no, it's still active. And typically, to improve instrument approaches on runways, you try to put the utilities underground, because if you have high wires going at the end of the runway, that the approaches, the minimums for the approach are so high that it becomes useless. So I'm not sure that's what they're doing or why, but it appears to me that ANN put some power underground.
Because they spent a heck of a lot of money just moving all those, reestablishing those poles.
Was that the reason why the power turns there anyway, it goes out
Yeah,
to the marsh
because
and
it's
it
the
comes
approach
back
of the
out?
runway, so 1735, so that's why everything's out in the marsh.
Mhm.
And maintaining that is brutal and
I
costly.
can imagine.
That's be cheaper to put it underground.
Yes.
Even if, there used to be a lot of people don't know, there used to be an airport in Kokomo,
Yeah,
Ferris. And if you ride down Old Virginia Road, you'll see that the power lines stop right short of his runway, go underground and pop back up on the other side.
Yep, yep.
Just for that reason. His strip is only 1,600 feet, it's very difficult line there.
it's quite an operation going on right now.
For a while there, we thought it could be a swimming pool, that's what it looked like.
It's a big hole, and then they put that conduit in it, or, you know,
And it's down in the gold. That part
I mean,
don't understand.
I think they started a project, it's raining every other day on them.
well,
Yeah.
To be quite honest, the best part of it for me is that they cut all that brush back again, so you can see the deer.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's from since they're not replacing all of the reflector poles that we had along there. You know, the further back that is, the better shot you have of seeing them.
Right, that's a good thing.
Well, they don't go, they forage at the edge of the forest, and so they don't come that close to the road.
There was five in the front yard of Bob's sister's house this evening. So, okay, Members, any announcements, comments, discussions? Nope. David, Steve, Bob?
Nope.
Mike, glad to see you here, bud. Next meeting will be covering the two issues that we talked about this evening specifically, and I'd like to get in further into some of the items that we had hit prior that are in our project plan. We haven't touched them, but I'll give some information to Mark for our next meeting. So, having said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.